Before I delve into the details of my recent and near fatal encounter, I first must confess that I have always maintained a deep fascination with large monsters. My life as both a guild-certified hunter and a field researcher has taught me that our relationship with these creatures is more nuanced than simple predator and prey. Each monster has its own behaviors, intelligence, and ecosystemic roles, intricacies that often go unnoticed by many who only see them as formidable challenges to be conquered. It was with these considerations in mind that I found myself traveling through the dense and ancient forest known simply as the frontier timberland. I had received word that a Deviljho, a nomadic apex predator known for its boundless hunger, had been sighted in the region. In all my years studying wyverns, flying beasts, and leviathans, I had never yet encountered a Deviljho in the wild. My knowledge of the species came primarily from scholarly texts, most of which offered dire warnings rather than unbiased observation. Tales abounded of entire ecosystems thrown off balance by its arrival, villages left defenseless due to its relentless feeding habits, and even well-seasoned hunters forced into hasty retreats. The impetus for my journey was therefore twofold. I wished to observe this legendary monster's behavior firsthand, and I hoped to gather data that might help localities protect themselves from its devastating appetite. The frontier timberland is a sprawling woodland that extends over rolling hills, thick undergrowth, and towering trees that have stood watch for centuries. Upon first entering its borders, I noted the place's vibrant life. Pack herbivores like Aptonoth grazed on the lush vegetation. A variety of smaller predators from jaguars to chamois lingered at the fringes, lurking for an opportunity to snatch unsuspecting prey. The timberland thrummed with an undercurrent of tension, the sort often found in an environment where the natural order is cyclical and precise. Yet from the moment I arrived, I sensed something was off. There was a hush among the creatures who normally would have paid little heed to a lone hunter. I made my way deeper into the forest, mindful to disturb as little as possible. My gear was minimal, but vital. A single-edged longsword strapped over my back, and a standard-issue field bag containing potions and rations, and the reliable slinger outfitted with several flash pods. My approach was stealthy, guided by the faint impressions of massive footprints left in the soil. With each step into these footprints, I observed how far they sank into the soft earth. The creature responsible must have been unbelievably heavy. My pulse quickened with anticipation and the slightest tremor of fear. As I trailed the footprints, I kept my eyes peeled for any sign of recent activity. Before long, I stumbled upon fresh evidence. Splintered trees, their trunks snapped as though they were mere twigs, upturned soil as if something enormous had been foraging or rampaging, and the pungent stench of partially digested meat. The air itself felt unnaturally thick, heavy, with an unshakable foreboding. I found the remains of a rather large Apsaros, or more accurately, what was left of it. The kill appeared fresh, likely from only an hour or two earlier. Already, scavengers had begun to circle, but none dared venture too close. It was then, in the middle of that grim display, that I first caught sight of the Deviljho's towering frame in the distance. A flash of mottled greenish-black hide, bristling with scar-like ridges, and exuding a raw physical power that was palpable even at a distance. My heart thumped hard against my chest. Yet, instead of immediately readying my blade, I found myself lowering into a crouch behind the remains of a fallen tree, determined to observe. In that moment, my scholarly curiosity outweighed my hunter's instinct, though not by much. From my concealed vantage point, I watched the Deviljho amble through the timberland as though it owned every inch of it. Thick muscles rippled beneath its scales, and its jaws, long and lined with dangerously sharp teeth, occasionally snapped at the air. Even with my thorough knowledge of monsters, I felt a sense of awe and dread. The Deviljho's mere presence seemed to drain the area of its natural ambience. Fewer birds sang, fewer creatures stirred, as though the entire forest had hushed in respect or fear. What struck me the most was the creature's restless energy. Many large monsters have periods of dormancy, times when they conserve energy or sleep after a kill. Not this one. Instead, the Deviljho paced with frenetic intensity, sniffing the ground and the air incessantly, as if forever in search of its next meal. I recalled that various scholarly treatises referred to this creature as the World Eater, a reference to its insatiable hunger and willingness to devour practically anything, regardless of size or strength. For nearly an hour, I meticulously took notes on the beast's movements and behavior. Its unpredictable nature kept me in a constant state of vigilance. The slightest snap of a branch under my foot, I feared, might draw its attention, and that would almost certainly spell my end before I could finish my observations. What the text failed to convey adequately, I realized, was that the Deviljho is not merely a mindless eating machine. Even in this short window of observation, I saw glimmers of intelligence. While investigating a cluster of mushrooms, it paused and seemed to test the air, as though discerning the difference between something edible and something best left untouched. It made a circular pass around a slope littered with vines, perhaps realizing that climbing down that way might be treacherous given its weight. Instead, it took a longer pass through thicker undergrowth, forging a new route entirely. To watch it from a safe, and I use that term loosely, distance, felt almost like witnessing the living embodiment of raw power tempered by cunning. Texts on monster ecology note that apex predators often shape their habitats. The Deviljho, however, seemed to be shaping the forest around it simply by existing. Everywhere it trudged, smaller creatures scattered or abandoned their dens, altering the local food chain dynamics. I found myself enthralled. The experience was akin to reading an extensive field guide come to life. Despite the fear twisting in my stomach, part of me wanted to approach it, to get a closer look at its hide, its eyes, and the curious lumps and ridges along its body. In a different world, one less fraught with mortal danger, perhaps I would have tried. My cautious observation continued until an abrupt disturbance shattered the stillness. A startled chorus of shrieks rang out from somewhere deeper in the forest, possibly from a pack of jaguars caught unawares. The Deviljho's entire body went rigid, as though every muscle fiber prepared for an attack or a chase. Before I could even process the shift, the monster took off in a heavy, thundering sprint toward the commotion. Dust and leaves whirled up in its wake, and the ground itself seemed to tremble beneath its mighty strides. Unsure whether this was my chance to retreat or a rare opportunity to see the beast in action, I followed at a distance, taking care to mask my footsteps and keep a line of sight. My heart hammered in my ears, competing with the adrenaline surging through my veins. It was a dangerous gamble, but my curiosity, one of my greatest strengths and flaws, propelled me forward. I came upon a clearing where the Deviljho was in the midst of a vicious hunt. A pack of jaguars scattered in every direction, their yelps echoing through the trees. The Deviljho roared, a terrifying sound that reverberated in my chest and momentarily paralyzed me. It lunged, jaws snapping, and easily caught one of the creatures in its maw. Anyone observing that scene would have understood that this was no contest. Jaguars, while capable of pack coordination, stood no chance against the sheer might of a Deviljho. The beast flung one hapless jaguar aside and slammed another into the earth with a swipe of its tail, leaving it stunned and broken. The frenzied prey scattered, but not fast enough. Another roar ripped through the clearing, and I watched as the Deviljho's jaws closed around a second jaguar's midsection. The grotesque display was accompanied by a primal sense of horror on my part. Even as a hunter, I'm used to monsters inflicting violence on one another. This is the way of the natural world. But to see it happen with such unbridled ferocity, and to know that not even the cunning of a small pack could hope to thwart this apex, was sobering. My knuckles whitened as I gripped my longsword's hilt. A conflict arose within me. Part of me wanted to remain hidden and simply record these brutal behaviors. Another part of me felt compelled to intervene, if only to save a portion of the Jagras pack. But the rational side of my mind knew better. Confronting a Deviljho was tantamount to launching oneself off of a cliff. As I was wrestling with indecision, the Deviljho abruptly seized its feast. Its massive head snapped upright, and in a moment of creeping dread, I saw it sniff the air again. This time, its entire body turned in my direction. The droplets of crimson on its maw glinted in the filtered sunlight. We locked eyes, or at least, I felt as though it were looking straight into me, analyzing my presence like a new piece of territory to be conquered or a piece of meat to be devoured. My heart thundered as I realized my cover was blown. Perhaps it was the shifting wind carrying my scent, or the slight rustle I made while repositioning for a clearer view. Whatever the cause, the Deviljho's interest in the Jagras had dissipated. I was the quarry now. Time slowed to a crawl in my mind. Despite every nerve screaming at me to run, to put as much distance as possible between us, my hunter training took over. Calm, practiced motions guided my hands as I slipped the longsword free from its scabbard. My breath came in shallow gasps. I could almost taste the fear on my tongue, bitter and metallic. The forest fell silent as if holding its breath, waiting to see what would unfold next. The Deviljho charged, its colossal weight shaking the ground. Instinct propelled me forward. The only way to avoid being stomped or bitten in a single blow was to move, and move fast. I vaulted to one side, narrowly dodging a swipe of its tail. The wind of it passing whipped leaves and branches into a chaotic flurry. My arms trembled, but my grip on the longsword remained steady. A part of my mind repeated a single mantra: focus. Keep your distance. Watch for openings. With a primal roar, the Deviljho spun, jaws snapping at me. I slashed out reflexively, catching its thick hide in a glancing blow that, to my dismay, barely penetrated. Sparks flew from the contact, and the beast roared again. This time, seemingly in anger rather than hunger. With each second, the stakes escalated. A single mistake on my part would mean a swift and brutal end. Though, weighed down by fear, I forced myself to rely on tactics I had honed in countless hunts. Footwork became my lifeline. I circled around the beast, staying light on my toes, pivoting to keep from getting pinned. At one point, the Deviljho reared onto its hind legs, slamming its chest forward in an intimidating posture. I managed a diagonal slash, aimed at its underbelly, but the angle was poor. The scales were thicker and more resilient than I had hoped. The cacophony of the battle drowned out everything else. The monstrous roars, the ring of steel against armor-like skin, and my own ragged breathing. In that adrenaline-fueled chaos, I realized how truly outmatched I was. My muscles burned as though I had been sprinting for hours, and my lungs fought for air. The Deviljho's unrelenting onslaught left me with little chance to regroup or strategize. Potions in my bag felt like a lifeline I could never quite reach. Every attempt to create distance to heal or sharpen my blade was cut short by the monster's relentless pursuit. At one critical moment, I was caught off guard by a tail sweep. The impact sent me hurtling into a massive tree trunk, the force knocking the wind out of me. My vision blurred. I tasted blood on my lip where I had bitten down hard. Dimly, I heard the monster's roar, closer than ever. For a panicked heartbeat, I believed I was doomed, pinned against the trunk with nowhere to run. Then, training and survival instinct kicked in. I fumbled for a flashpot in my slinger, forcing my trembling fingers to load it. At the exact second the Deviljho's jaws lunged toward me, I fired. A blinding burst of light erupted between us. The creature's roar morphed into a furious yowl as it recoiled, flailing and shaking its massive head in disorientation. I took the chance to roll away from the tree, stumbling as I gulped down a mega potion. My wounds throbbed, but at least I could stand. Sensing the Deviljho's momentary blindness, I summoned the last of my strength to press the attack. The beast thrashed, trying to regain its focus, but I knew the effect of a flashpod wouldn't last long on a creature so powerful. With a steep lunge, I drove my longsword into the side of its neck. The scales resisted at first, but I leveraged my body weight behind the blow. Blood spurted from the wound as the Deviljho let loose another deafening roar, this one tinged with pain. Still partially blinded, it snapped wildly in all directions. I narrowly dodged its jaws, each near miss accompanied by the hot, rancid stench of the beast's breath. I pulled my blade free just as it swung its head in my direction again, forcing me to duck to avoid being decapitated. My legs were unsteady, and the forest swayed around me in a dizzy haze of adrenaline and fatigue. The monster's blood now streaked my armor and my sword, a stark reminder that it could still tear me apart with ease if given the chance. With a desperate determination, I circled around its flank, searching for a vital spot. The Deviljho snapped at me again, and I barely slid to the side. Summoning the final reserves of my stamina, I jumped forward, delivering an overhead slash aimed at the same wound on its neck, hoping to widen it enough to damage the vital arteries beneath. A final, tortured roar reverberated through the clearing. As if in slow motion, the colossal frame of the Deviljho crumpled. The earth shook upon its impact. Stunned, I barely believed that the savage apex now lay motionless before me. In the ensuing silence, every sound felt magnified. The ragged draw of my breath, the pounding of my heart, and the subtle shift of the leaves in the trees. My arms trembled so badly that I could scarcely hold my sword. It was over. After those few frenzied minutes that felt like an eternity, the Deviljho was slain. I sank to my knees, half in exhaustion, half in disbelief. My body screamed with pain, my shoulder bruised from colliding with the tree, my ribs possibly cracked, and countless cuts and scrapes burning against the sweat that soaked my tunic. Yet, through the haze of agony, I felt a surge of mixed emotions. Relief, sorrow, awe, and even a bit of pride. Here lay the legendary World Eater, a creature of seemingly endless hunger and unstoppable force, defeated by the narrowest margin. Part of me lamented the fact that this living monument to nature's savage splendor was gone. Another part recognized that the life of every villager and traveler in this region would now be safer. After stabilizing myself and performing basic first aid, I began to record the details of the hunt in my notebook. My hands shook so violently that my handwriting was nearly illegible. Still, I persisted. Detailed observations might benefit future research, and any hunter who would face a Deviljho again. In recounting this tale, I aim not to glorify the violence inherent in the hunter's calling, but to document an encounter that highlights both the terror and wonder that define life in our world. The Deviljho is more than a monster of insatiable appetite. In those quiet hours of observation before the chaos of battle, I witnessed cunning, adaptability, and a magnitude of presence that can only be described as primeval majesty. To stand in its shadow is to be reminded of one's own fragility and to see how easily our role in nature can shift from observer to prey. Yet the role of a hunter is not solely to kill. We learn, we document, and we strive to maintain a balance that allows for coexistence. Sometimes, tragically, that means removing a threat when it poses too great a danger to those we protect. Such was the case here, and though I mourn the loss of a formidable beast, I take solace in knowing that my research may help others understand the Deviljho's movements and temperament. In the end, I walked away a changed individual, left with scars that remind me daily of the razor's edge we tread between life and death. This essay is not merely a record of a successful hunt. It is a testament to the Deviljho's majesty and menace, a reminder that in our ever-expanding world, there remain creatures whose power challenges the very foundations of our courage, and whose nature demands our respect. And so, with trembling hands and a heart still echoing the thunder of that terrible roar, I leave you these words. Should you ever seek out the Deviljho, do so with caution. Observe first, learn what you can. But never forget that this predator, unyielding in its hunger, is nature's fury incarnate. If you dare face it, be prepared to stand on the precipice of your own survival, and to emerge forever altered, should you be fortunate enough to survive at all.